Okay, hi there. Welcome to an update video looking at the issue of labour migration into the UK economy. This is one of those topics that has a strong demand and supply side aspect to it. And it's often one that I teach, for example, when I'm looking at labour market economics, but also supply side economic policies in macro at the same time. The issue of immigration, of course, has been a key one in politics for many years. This is quite not an easy chart to look at. I'll simplify it in a second. But it basically tracks a survey in the UK of people who were asked which of the following do you think are the most important issues facing the country at this time. And immigration, if I just take out some of the other 14 indicators there, but if I just take out some of them and leave them with just 5, Brexit, the economy, immigration, which is in that dark grey colour, health and environment. You can see that actually the percentage of people saying it's the most important issue, or people citing it as an important issue, has been relatively stable, certainly in the last few years, at about 25-30%. It was a bigger issue if we go back 5 years to the Brexit referendum in 2016. And I think certainly when we look at the data, there's one or two interesting points to be made. Here's the data showing migration into the UK, immigration since 1980. And you can see there's been a substantial increase in migration coming into the UK, particularly, of course, from the early 2000s onwards, not least after the accession of 10 extra countries into the European Union in 2004, followed by Bulgaria and Romania, who came in 2007. Now, that's people coming into the UK. Keep in mind, of course, that people leave. So what matters most, I suppose, here is net migration, which of course is the balance between these two figures. And net migration actually reached a peak of over 300,000 in 2015, just a year before the EU referendum took place. So it was a particularly important issue and certainly politically salient at the time. You can see from this chart, if you look on the right hand side, that net migration has come down, dropping to about 220,000 plus in 2019, according to the most recent data. Of course, there's a lot of uncertainty at the moment about what's happened to migration over the last year or so in the wake of and during the coronavirus pandemic. The employment rate is the percentage of the working population that are in work, and you can see here from this chart that since the mid-2000s, the employment rate for EU nationals, people from Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, the Czech Republic, that employment rate has been higher than for UK nationals. The vast majority of EU nationals coming to the UK come to work. And so it's actually a higher figure than migration from non-EU nationals, where one suspects there's probably a higher level of inbuilt family migration as well. This chart just gives us a little feel for the number of visas, a work visa or a work permit issued in the UK over the last 15 years or so. It dipped during the recession and it's actually increased quite a bit in the last few years, but again, particularly post-2016 after the Brexit referendum. Now this chart is quite interesting. This shows net migration by citizenship. And follow the blue line at the bottom, it suggests that on balance around 1,000 Britons every week leave the UK. Net migration coming in from the EU was rising through to 2015, but has since fallen back to levels last seen a decade or so ago. There's been quite a sharp fall in EU migration, but a rise in the level of number of people coming in from outside the European Union, non-EU, countries such as India, Australia, United States, etc. Well, this is an article from a big read in the FT. I'll post a link to the article. It's a great read, actually, in April 2021, suggesting that 20 years of migration into the UK seems to have reached a turning point, and perhaps there is going to be quite a significant decrease in net migration in the months and possibly years to come. Several articles have been written. Jonathan Portes has written in The Guardian, hinting that some estimates put more than 1 million people have left the country during the pandemic. Again, the FT here, the coronavirus sparks exodus of foreign-born people from the UK. Up to 1.3 million may have left in the last 12 months. Although there's a lot of uncertainty about the data. And some industry-specific examples here. Flower growers perhaps hit by post-Brexit labour shortages. And interestingly, I've got a visit to the dentist planned. Dentists warn of looming recruitment crisis in the UK. Dentists from the European Economic Area, I think, make up something like 1 in 5 of all registered dentists. In some parts of the UK, up to 30% of NHS dentists working for the NHS come from countries such as Poland, Spain and Romania. So clearly some quite big issues coming up. And of course, as an economist, oftentimes you're asked to analyse and evaluate some of the benefits and some of the costs of migration, particularly when it's fairly high levels, and you can do a sort of cost-benefit analysis. It's a really good essay question, by the way, to develop evaluation skills. If we think about some of the advantages of high migration, first of all, it increases the labour supply. Younger people coming into the labour force, typically looking for work, wanting to work, often wanting to work long hours. So it increases the size of the labour force, which of course you can then link to long run aggregate supply. Workers coming in can help to relieve key worker shortages. We mentioned NHS dentists a few seconds ago. And often they bring new skills into the economy. So there could be industries where there are specific skill shortages. One thinks about industries such as construction, for example, where those skills are much in demand. Migrants often seen as very entrepreneurial in nature, so you might get a stimulus in business enterprise and startups. Clearly a rise in population, especially young people with a fairly high propensity to spend, can stimulate consumption and aggregate demand, which then drives investment. And people coming in to a country with diverse experiences and diverse views and interpretations of the world around them, they can be a source of innovation. There's quite strong evidence, by the way, that diverse workplaces are often much better for the adoption of and the generation of ideas. Migrants coming in can help to lift productivity, particularly if they have the skills that are in demand. And there's a big debate about this, but most reports argue that migrants who work are actually net contributors to the UK government's fiscal balance. They pay their taxes, okay, they take out welfare of course, but on balance they're probably net beneficiaries to the UK fiscal accounts. And for many countries, of course, ageing population is a huge issue. A rise in the dependency ratio, a rise in the median age, so the influx or an influx of younger workers can help to bring down the median age and help to control the rise in the dependency ratio, particularly in countries where fertility is very low. So a range of arguments for migration there, and clearly there are also drawbacks. I'm not necessarily going to be equivalent in the number of points I want to make. I'm sure you can think of many other issues as well. But high rates of migration increase the demand for welfare. Again, especially, for example, if there's a downturn, you've got a bigger migrant population that is able to claim those benefits. There's growing pressure on key public services, including education, including healthcare, as the migrant population increases. And in theory, if you think about the labour market, an influx of workers increases labour supply, which, other things being the same, could put possible downward pressure on real wages in certain jobs. It can also increase the demand for housing, both to buy and to rent. So it could worsen housing affordability issues. And of course, clearly there are social challenges, social tensions can often exist, particularly in localities where quite quickly the migrant population as a share of the total population rises to a higher level. One also has to think about the consequences for the countries that essentially send or from which the migrants come. They will be suffering a possible loss of younger workers, possible brain drains. Think about African countries losing doctors to work in London and Paris, for example, or Eastern European countries losing skilled workers to come and work in the UK construction sector. So sometimes there's a downside for those countries, and if their growth rate's slow, then that might make it a little harder for the UK to export, for example, to those countries. All sorts of issues related to this, remittances, for example, the flow of remittances from the UK to other countries is a definite important issue you could think about. And when you're analysing migration, don't forget this is one of those key topics that has both a demand and a supply side aspect to it. The really good answers are able to use good analysis good, strong analysis to help build their evaluation. So migrant net migration will impact on one or more of the components of demand, including consumption, obviously, but the possible multiplier and accelerator effects if that drives high levels of investment. But there's also the impact on supply. In the short run, what does migration do to labour shortages, to wages, the amount of spare capacity? And in the long run, what about the possible consequences for productivity, which we mentioned, investment, innovation, and business enterprise? So much to discuss. Well, as of 2021, the UK is no longer a member of the European Union, and therefore the free movement built into the European single market no longer applies to migrants wanting to live and work in the UK. And as many of you will know, the UK has decided to move towards, although there's dispute and uncertainty around the edges, move towards a points-based system. At the moment, people coming in will require 70 points. That's the threshold for entry to get a visa. And these are the number of points that you can get. Some of them are tradable, some of them are not. So you do need an offer of a job from a approved sponsor at the right skill level. You need to be able to speak English. That gets you 50 points. And then you have to find another 20 points from somewhere. And obviously if you've got a high wage job with a salary of, let's say, 30,000 or more, that gets you 20 points. If it's a job in a designated shortage occupation, that gets you 20 points. And highly trained, highly skilled people with PhDs in relevant subjects, including STEM, can get extra points as well. So the UK is has moved away from essentially free movement inside the European Union towards, it'll take a few years to settle down, towards a points-based visa system as part of their migration strategy. And who knows where this will take the UK. It's one of those topics where everybody will have a view, and I think the crucial thing is to try to balance some of the arguments out. Look at the evidence, look at the data, often go into a bit more granular detail, because oftentimes the big numbers don't tell us something, but actually the interesting detail comes at the level of the firm or the industry, or indeed the people themselves who are migrants into the UK, and those are other communities who are affected. There we go. That was my update video on migration. I hope it was useful as part of your economic studies. Huge thanks for joining me. Stay safe, stay curious, and see you sometime soon.